Good morning, Americans. This is your favorite alien and Bubba here on this rainy Saturday, November 23rd. Well, I guess we're heading for impeachment articles, huh? So I would think I would do a special report for you guys on the Nixon impeachment and put in facts that you guys never knew about that. And you make your own decision. The records are still there. And, there's a lot of facts that everybody wanted covered that caused that situation. Everybody thinks it's Watergate, but really no. So here it goes. Little background. In 1968 or 67, somewhere around in there, President Johnson ordered a taping system in the White House. When Richard Nixon assumed the office on January 20th, 1969, he kept the system, which, as you know, cost him his presidency per Watergate. But really, did Watergate really cost him the presidency? And here was the situation, okay? In 1974, your Senate was made up of a breakdown of 56 Democrats, 42 Republicans, one independent, and one open seat. Now, let's assume that the independent would side with the Democrats, like Mr. Sanders over here today. So, in a sense, it was 57-42 and one open. So, 99 senators were would be on the impeachment as the jury, okay? So, the Democrats needed 10 to cross over from the Republicans in order to impeach President Richard Nixon. Kind of in the same position they're in here, except that they controlled both houses of Congress in 1974, which the Republicans control the Senate this time. So that makes it a little different. But when the impeachment proceedings started, you must understand what went on. Watergate was a small little break in on June 17, 1972. But why did President Nixon authorize the break in of the Democratic National Headquarters at the Watergate complex on June 17, 1972? He had the election won. I mean, even in 1972, before the conventions, the Democrats were in shambles. Remember, you had Mr. Wallace got shot earlier that year, so he was out. He was a primary candidate that Nixon had to worry about. Um, and then you had Edmund Muskie, who was just a regular Joe Blow, but couldn't get any traction. So when the conventions happened, you knew that there were going to be a lot of disaster on the Democratic Party. Because other candidates that they had, I mean, in 68 and 72, were all either dead or shot, or, people didn't like them. So they didn't have much. They had to choose McGovern. you know, Senator McGovern uh, couldn't even win his home state, huh? Well, anyway, so Nixon had it made, and the Republicans knew it. Why did he authorize the break in? That is the question that you have to ask. And my untold sources here, and I bet you Deep Throat is one that Carl Bernstein, Woodward and Bernstein over there will know. But will they ever publish their book on that? You got to ask them. And ask the Washington Post for their notes. Because they knew why Nixon resigned. And it wasn't because of Watergate. It was because he would have faced a treason charge in the impeachment proceedings. Why treason? Well, he conducted underground diplomacy with Communist China from 1969 to 1971 that led to the dislodging of nationalist China from the seat in the UN. Now, why would you want to do that? Because it puts communist China with veto power in the UN, right? Well, there was a lot of arm twisting there. The Chinese wanted that seat, and they wanted communist China out of the UN. I mean, the nationalist China out of the UN. So what came out of that? Well, let's see. China got the seat in 1971, and Taiwan, as you call it today, or nationalist China, got referred to as a renegade province of China. Didn't have a seat in the UN at all. And most governments in the world don't recognize it. The United States, they say they got a defense treaty with China. Really? After they did this? They're the ones that caused his downfall. Well, they're the ones that caused everything, because President Roosevelt, when he envisioned the United Nations, why did he give China and Russia a seat? And especially with veto power. You ever figure that out? Well, imagine those tapes that were done there with Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger. That's another person that could probably shed some light on this situation, couldn't it? But this is the case. When the impeachments happened, it was 56-42 or 57-42. The Democrats still needed 10. The Republicans could have stayed hands-on this. Even though the articles of impeachment had them, they could still hands off on this, okay? And that would have been no problem. Then again, what happened to Richard Nixon was twofold. Number one, the break-in. Number two, his vice president, Spiro Agnew, had tax evasion, so he had to resign in 1973, I believe October. So the only guy that had some inkling on this was Gerald R. Ford. And what, like the old days, if you got a guy that's harmful to you, you put him in a position that nobody can do anything about. Vice president. So Nixon did the old-fashioned way that they have done for century before. Put the guy you hate in the number 2 position. Came back to bite him in the ass, didn't it? Because he had to resign because he knew that the Democrats controlling the House and controlling the Senate were bound to figure out there's more tapes there and about the China situation. Gerald R. Ford, he probably told them, gee, Mr. President, you better resign. Because if this comes out, it's going to be treason. It's going to be bad for the United States. And I bet you the Republicans told them that too, that they would cave. That's what makes him resign. It wasn't Watergate, it was that. And notice that a month later, Gerald R. Ford's hands were tied. He had to pardon him. You don't want a president tried for treason even after he leaves his office, do you? Really? Anyway, this is your favorite alien in Bubba. Good day.